something, and I'll talk about it generically, knowing that in the back of my mind, I'm talking about that thing that I saw, that thing that I heard, that thing, and I will talk about that. And they will understand they are not stupid. They will understand. We are not dealing with switches, make priority, etc. But it is the way of life, the way that you are guiding them through it, that, inshallah ta'ala, they will get that as a priority.
Sorry, I don't know if it's discouraging statement, but sometimes people refer to the prophets. Some prophets, children didn't come to Islam. So how do you explain this?
We have to differentiate between what we are required to do and the end result. First of all, we have to understand our role. We can never call and teach Islam better than the Anbiya, the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When Nuh alayhi salam did not, convince his son, or his son disobeyed, the call of Nuh, and he did not become a Muslim, and he thought that the mountain was going to protect him from the creator of the mountain. On the one hand, we have to understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who provides the hidayah. He is the one who provides, and Allah ta'ala tells Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, لَيْسَ عَلَيْكَ هُدَاهُمْ. لَيْسَ عَلَيْكَ هُدَاهُمْ. It's not your responsibility to guide them, nor is it our responsibility. Responsibility, meaning what we will be held accountable for in the day of judgment. It is not our responsibility to guide them. It's not our responsibility to make them do something, become something. It's our responsibility to raise them according to certain standards, according to certain, rules, value systems that we put in them day in and day out. And after that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides whoever He wishes. So never should the Muslim be discouraged or feel that I'm a failure because somebody did not respond positively to my da'wah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides whoever He wishes. It's up to Him. Our responsibility is to provide. Is to provide and to teach and to educate and to guide and to show the affection and show the love and show the sternness and show the everything that we can do to the best of our ability. That's our responsibility. After that, what happens is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But something that you need to keep in mind also, my brother, is that sometimes because we are social beings, we are not robots. Sometimes the child does not respond to you when they're 12 or 13 or 15. But what you teach them in childhood often comes back when they're 40 and 50. So never think that that what I said to him, it's gone, maybe gone today. You think it's gone today. But eventually when the shaitan gets away from his head, when the things come down, he starts seeing things, and what will stick with him is what he was taught when he was a child. Never think that what you're doing is for nothing. If Allah Ta'ala wishes to guide him, He will guide him. But the point is, don't think that it's gone astray. So we do our responsibilities. We always make the dua to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala to guide them and to not to make our ibtila, our calamity or our test with our deen or our children or something like that. And after that, it is up to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala to guide whoever He wishes.
This is the last point I would like to stress upon. And indeed, we can undermine the power of the dua. Perhaps that should be actually our thinking, or we should be obsessed with that not only after Salah, more often from deep of our heart, we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Absolutely.
Even indeed the prophets, we have that example, that even at their last moment, they're like faithful.
Absolutely.
Allah says in the Quran, remember Allah wants you to be successful. The success just depends on how much you remember Allah more and more, right? But the society that we live in now is suffering so much love for that. People don't remember Allah, this is proper land, right? So my question is, to what degree do we insulate our children in society around us in terms of friends and music and movies and games? And how do we also try to build in ourselves and remember Allah most teach that question?
I think it's a very good question, and I think it also ties in with this question, so I'm going to read it so both questions can be answered. So we're going to get two birds with one stone. In a situation where a child does something haram, how do you address it? For example, let's say my daughter refuses to wear hijab when she reaches puberty. Are we required to force her, given we live in such an open society where she can take it off the second she walks out of the door? Or do we not force her in order to keep the lines of communication open? I think this question directly overlaps with your question of raising children. And you mentioned the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I think as this questioner again mentioned, let's say my daughter refuses to wear hijab when she reaches puberty. We're not going to cry over spilled milk, because when she reaches puberty and then you tell her about hijab, it's a bit too late, because she's already been influenced by many other influences. So the same thing with the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it begins at a very, very, very early age. And the children, sometimes we underestimate what they see or what they pick up around us. In reality, they pick up almost everything we do. They pick up and learn from our mannerisms. They pick up and learn from what we say and how we act. So I think what's important to do from a very early age is to develop in them the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's very important in the beginning. If we look at the ayats that were first revealed, Aisha radiallahu anha said that the first verses that were revealed were not about ahkam. They were not about commands and prohibitions. They were about the akhirah. So to inculcate in our children the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the belief of the akhirah, the belief of the hereafter, the longing to go to Jannah, because no matter what they see in this world, if they are properly told that in Jannah there's something better, they will drop what they see and aspire for what's in Jannah. If they're properly trained and told that the Prophet said, "Man taraka shay'an lillah, awwadahu Allahu khayran minhu." Where the Prophet said, "Whoever leaves something for the sake of Allah, Allah will replace it with something not equal, something better than it." If we inculcate this principle in them, then they will always aspire for Jannah. There's nothing in this world that exists except that it exists in a better form in Jannah. There's wine here, there's wine in Jannah. So we can draw that comparison. If you see something haram that's attracting you, think of that same exact thing that exists in Jannah, where it's going to be eternal. If this thing attracts you and is pulling you, imagine what it would do for you, what it would do to you if you were with it eternally in Jannah. So to create that belief in the akhirah and to give examples. For example, the Prophet Muhammad said about his grandson Hassan. The Prophet said that perhaps Allah Azza wa Jalla will bring two groups of people together through him. And he called them a Sayyid, a leader. Now we know Al-Hassan was Khalifa for 6 months. And he stepped down simply for the unification of the Muslims. But he stepped down, the Prophet still called him a leader. Right? That's a side note, by the way. Still called him a leader, which means that leaders are not always people who have positions, but leaders are also people who actually make the right decisions, who actually unify the Ummah, who actually do these great deeds. But the point here is, he left for the sake of Allah this leadership position. Allah Azza wa Jalla replaced him with something better than it. The Prophet said he will be Sayyid al-Shabab, he will be the leader of the youth in Jannah. Isn't that better? There's nothing that's left for the sake of Allah except Allah Azza wa Jalla replaces it with something better. So if we teach these morals to our children, that if they see haram, they see people not wearing hijab, they will leave it for the sake of Allah, hoping for something else. So we cannot say, this is haram, don't do that, without providing an alternative. The Prophet Muhammad always provided an alternative. When a man who committed adultery came to him, and the Prophet said to him, a man who